before we go, take a quick check on chips as well, because that's been a lot of where the action has been as well today. It's names like Nvidia, it's AMD, it's Qualcomm, of course, Saudi Arabia. President Trump was there, a lot of announcements, and a lot of excitement from investors.
Exactly. Yep. Here you got your semiconductor stocks. You can see Nvidia, a huge pop there.
4% in Nvidia. Well, we have just the man to talk to about chip stocks, including Nvidia and AMD. Moving back today on the back of AI deals between Saudi Arabia and U.S. technology firms. For more on the sector, want to bring in now Patrick Moorhead, founder, CEO, and chief analyst at Moor Insights Strategy. Patrick, it is great to see you as always, particularly today, Patrick, because you are the man to answer this question. I was just talking to Maddie, these moves we see in these chip names, Patrick, and of course we had President Trump in Saudi Arabia. We had this flurry of headlines, reports, AI-specific announcements, Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm. You did, Patrick, on X. You asked an interesting question, I thought, Patrick, off those announcements. You asked, listen, are these hard deals? Are these hard contracts? Or more like kind of, soft LOIs, letters of intent? What's your line of sight there, Patrick?
Yeah, so first of all, the only similarity between these AI deals is that they were with Humane and the KSA, right? But they were very different, right? AMD was all about a joint venture with a $10 billion price tag, but no details on who's funding what, where would the AMD capitalization come from? So, when the details aren't there, you have to assess that this thing is early in. And then with Nvidia, it was really straightforward, right? They're selling GPUs with a price tag estimated at around $7 billion, but still no firm commitment, no firm order around that. But with that said, it's very exciting because I don't think investors were factoring any of this into their theses going into this.
Patrick, one question for chip investors, of course, has been whether we kind of hit this peak in capex, right? And my question to you is, was that question in any way answered by what we just saw in Saudi Arabia? And here's how Bernstein's Stacy Rasgon, Stacy, what he wrote his clients. He said, for investors worried about AI capex sustainability, we now have another deep-pocketed customer willing and capable to spend large amounts of money on a clearly strategic push as Saudi Arabia attempts to position itself as a regional and global AI hub. Your response to that, Patrick?
I agree with Stacy, and I view this as incremental upside, right? This wasn't factored into my calculations in terms of this capex. It was typically, we just look at the Mag 7 and what they committed to. This was very much not in the Mag 7 capital expenditure updates, and it's an upside. One interesting thing, though, about this is that we're researching right now is this potentially going to take away any business out of Western Europe that has put up nearly every blockade to drive innovation, AI? And it's not that protecting people's information is important. It is, but when they find themselves drastically behind other parts of the world, this could be a move for the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar to take market share away from Western Europe.
And Patrick, I love that you bring up the global perspective. This is something I was speaking with Gil Luria about earlier today in regards to China's role in this dynamic here. We were talking about the fact that Bank of America does say that the Saudi deal will offset any restrictions that put a curb on China's ability to increase purchases of chips. But that doesn't seem to be consensus. Gil was telling me there's a concern that more severe China restrictions are still a risk for Nvidia. So where do you net out on that?
So when it comes to China, right, you have a lot of different camps inside of DC, which is why it looks like there's mixed messages. On one day, you'll have President Trump saying one thing, and then you'll have somebody in the cabinet saying something slightly different, and then you'll have a senator who might be a China hawk really lean in. So there's a lot of discussion going on there. I think, though, that the AI diffusion law, as it relates to the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and Qatar in specific, that will disincent those regions from buying Chinese semiconductors, which I think is a net positive, but also the restrictions that we were going to put on countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar are no longer the case.
So Patrick, put a bow on this for me for NVIDIA investors. Is this rally just the beginning, or is this a temporary bounce?
This is likely a temporary bounce, but it's a consistent bounce because it will likely lead to a net revenue and profit upside for NVIDIA. I still think China is the number one element and region to figure out for some sort of a big rally with NVIDIA, but we've seen some early softening in the tones that the administration has put out there. And I do believe that if Trump administration can craft a real deal, right? Because what we saw earlier was a framework for a deal and pulling back to what one of your guests said, which still is the highest tariffs we've ever seen, then we could see even more restrictions being pulled back on China.
Patrick, I want to end here by drilling down into another name you know very well, which is AMD, making news in Saudi Arabia as well. Strong earnings report. They now announced this share buyback. Just talk to me, Patrick, about how you see AMD's role in the broader competitive landscape now and looking ahead.
Right. So they're on a roll. I mean, they have record CPU market share at around 40%. That still means that ARM and Intel have the other 60%, but they're doing very, very well. And I think what investors were looking for was an extra vote of confidence related to their data center GPUs. I did think that they got this with the Saudi Arabia deal, the $10 billion joint venture. But holistically, what they do want to see is they do want to see some more specific numbers from them and a roadmap. I think we are going to get more details on that in a month at AMD's event in San Francisco. Final comment on the buybacks, the $6 billion buybacks that enables up to $10 billion in total is a vote of confidence from the board of directors that they believe that the company is undervalued. A very good sign.
All right, Patrick, we got to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Maddie, Josh.